The listing had been up for 6 hours when Logan Hayes found it. He had not been searching for it. He had not been searching for anything. It was 11 at night, and he was sitting at the kitchen table in his rental house in Coronado with a cup of coffee gone cold, and the specific kind of sleeplessness that doesn't announce itself as insomnia, but simply keeps a man at a table after midnight looking at a screen without quite deciding what he's looking for. The listing was on a civilian pet sale site. It said, male German Shepherd, 6 Eyres, 84 lbs, working line, great with experienced handler. $350, must go this weekend. Below the description was a photograph. Logan had seen that dog's face every day for 3 years. He had watched that dog work Helmand Province and the Korengal and a mountain road outside Coast that was the last place Chief Petty Officer Daniel Reeves had ever walked. He knew the specific white blaze on the chest, the notched left ear, the way the dog held his head slightly to the right when he was listening for something the rest of the room hadn't heard yet. The dog's name was Titan. He had belonged to Danny Reeves. Danny had been dead for 8 months. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. What Logan found behind that listing is something no one in the rescue community saw coming. Stay with us until the very end. We read every single comment, and we are grateful for each of you. Logan Hayes was 38 years old and carried the kind of stillness that takes a long time to build. Not quietness exactly, but a quality of occupying space without announcing it. The way a weight sits on a table rather than landing on it. He was 6'1", lean and wide through the shoulders, with close-cropped dark hair and a jaw that had carried 3 days of stubble for the better part of a year. Not from inattention, but from the specific indifference to presentation that comes when a man's organizing principle has been removed and he hasn't yet found what replaces it. His eyes were a clear, steady gray-green, the color of deep water on an overcast morning. People who worked with him in the field described them as the calmest eyes they had encountered in a person under fire, which was the kind of thing that got said about men who had trained themselves to separate what they felt from what they showed. And Logan had been training for a long time. He had been a Chief Petty Officer with SEAL Team 7 for 13 years. 3 deployments, Helmand Province in 2014 and 2017, and a classified engagement near Coast in 2022. That was the deployment from which Danny Reeves did not come home. He had received the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal and did not think about it. He had come back from Coast 8 months ago with a medical recommendation for transition counseling that he had attended twice and then stopped. Not from pride, but from the specific difficulty of talking to someone about a loss that had no language adequate to it. Danny Reeves had been his partner for 7 years. In the SEAL community, partner means something specific, not roommate, not colleague, not friend, though it contains all of these. It means the person whose position you know without checking, whose breathing tells you something is wrong before they speak, whose family you know by name and visit when you're stateside, whose dog sleeps in the same room as your gear because the two of you share a team house, and the dog has decided to belong to both of you. That was how Logan had come to know Titan, not as Danny's dog, not as a working dog, but as the third presence in the particular gravity field of a partnership that had lasted 7 years. Danny had died on a Tuesday morning in March outside Coast. He had been 29 seconds from the vehicle when the device triggered. Logan had been 40 feet to the north. He had done what he had been trained to do, which had not included a way to bring Danny back, and that gap between what training covered and what the situation required was the thing he had been sitting with at the kitchen table at 11 at night for 8 months. He picked up his phone. He called the number in the listing. The voice that answered belonged to a man named Preston Wade, and it had the specific confident warmth of someone who was not surprised to be called at 11 at night about a dog for sale, and was practiced at managing the conversation that followed. Preston Wade was 46 years old and operated what he described as a premium dog rehoming service based out of Tempe, Arizona, a business that occupied the legal gray space between pet brokerage and private rescue, taking in high-value working-line dogs from owners who could no longer keep them, and placing them for a rehoming fee that varied. Preston had explained in a website FAQ that Logan had read in the 7 minutes between finding the listing and making the call. Between $200 and $1,200, depending on the animal's training history and market demand. Titan's listing said $350. What Preston Wade had not listed, what did not appear in the FAQ or the listing description or the terms of service that Logan had also read in those 7 minutes, was how Titan had come to be in his custody. Military working dogs who were retired or separated from service were managed through a specific federal adoption program. That program had a process. There were forms. There were evaluations. There was a priority queue that put working dog handlers and veterans first. The process existed because Congress had passed a law in 2000 making it illegal to euthanize military working dogs and establishing the rights of handlers to adopt them. The process was not a formality. Danny Reeves had submitted adoption paperwork for Titan before the coast deployment. The paperwork had been in the system. Logan knew, because Danny had told him about it, had told him on the flight out, in the specific way Danny talked about the future, as a list of things he intended to do, told to Logan as a check against forgetting them. Logan had not forgotten any of them. What had happened to Danny's adoption paperwork after March was something Logan had spent the first 3 hours of this night finding out, working through the military working dog program contacts he had, calling numbers after midnight and leaving messages until a program coordinator named Specialist Chambers had called him back at 1 a.m. and told him in a voice that carried its own particular weight that the paperwork had been processed after Danny's death, that Titan had been released for adoption, and that the file showed the dog had been claimed by a family member of the deceased. Danny Reeves had no family. Logan knew this. Danny had grown up in the foster system, had no siblings, had no parents living. The family member listed in the adoption file was a name Logan did not recognize. He called Preston Wade back at 1:17 a.m. "I'd like to come see the dog," Logan said. Tomorrow. Coronado to Tempe was 6 hours by road, and Logan made it in 5 hours and 40 minutes on a Thursday morning, which was the kind of driving that happens when a man has somewhere specific to be and sufficient reason to be there. He drove with the particular, focused quiet of a man who has assessed a situation and is in the execution of a decision already made. He did not call ahead again after the 1:17 call. He did not tell Preston Wade he was coming at a specific time. He had learned in 13 years that the information you don't provide is sometimes more useful than the information you do. He had, in those 5 hours and 40 minutes, also called 2 people. The first was a woman named Captain Alicia Torres, JAG Corps, Naval Legal Services, who had handled 3 cases involving improper military working dog transfers, and who picked up her personal cell at 6:15 a.m. with the alertness of someone who had learned to answer early calls from numbers she didn't recognize. He had described the situation in 4 sentences. She had been quiet for 3 seconds. She had said, "The name in the adoption file, do you have it?" "Holt Reeves," Logan said. "Danny didn't have a brother." "No," Torres said. "But someone filed paperwork saying he did." Another pause. "Sit in the parking lot when you get there. Don't go in until I call you back." The second call was to Specialist Chambers to formally request a copy of the adoption file. Chambers had it ready by 8 a.m. Torres called Logan at 9:43, while he was 40 minutes outside Tempe. Holt Reeves does not exist in any federal database. The signature on the adoption release form uses the same formation as the signature on a separate document filed with the Arizona Department of Agriculture licensing Preston Wade's facility. I've sent everything to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. You can go in now. Do not pay anything. Do not sign anything. And Logan, don't lose your temper. I don't lose my temper, Logan said. I know, Torres said. I'm saying it because it's important. Preston Wade's facility was a clean, well-maintained operation, the kind of place designed to communicate legitimacy through appearance. With a gravel parking lot and a professional sign and kennels that smelled of antiseptic rather than neglect. Wade himself was a compact, well-groomed man who met Logan in the parking lot with the handshake of someone who expected it to communicate something, and who had assessed Logan's vehicle and posture in the walk across the gravel and arrived at a comfortable estimate of who he was dealing with. He had not estimated correctly. Logan followed him through the facility to the rear kennel block. He noted the exits. He noted the cameras. He noted the fact that 2 other dogs in the facility were also working line shepherds with the specific build and coat pattern of former military working dogs, and that neither of them had documentation posted on their runs. Titan was in the 3rd run from the left. Logan stopped. Titan stood at the front of the run and looked at Logan with the specific whole-body attention of a dog who is doing something more than recognizing, who is confirming something he has been waiting to confirm for a long time. His ears came forward. His tail came up, not the exuberant wag of a dog greeting a stranger, but the controlled, high-set tail of a working dog who has identified something important and is communicating the identification through posture. He put his nose to the kennel door. He did not make a sound. Logan put his hand flat on the door. Titan pressed his nose against Logan's palm through the chain link. Logan stood there for a moment and did not say anything. He was a man who had been trained to separate what he felt from what he showed, and the training was working, and he was grateful for it. He turned to Preston Wade. "Tell me how you came to have this dog," he said. His voice was the voice he used in situations where precision mattered more than warmth. Not cold, but exact. The kind of voice that tells the other person, without saying so, that the answer will be evaluated. Wade gave the story he'd prepared. A family member of the deceased handler, unable to care for the dog, had surrendered him to Wade's facility 2 months prior. Legal adoption through the federal program, properly documented. Wade had the paperwork. "I'd like to see it," Logan said. Wade produced a folder. Logan read it. He read it with the same attention he had read Target packages in Helmand, looking not for what was there, but for the gap between what was there and what should be. The signature on the federal adoption release form used the same pen pressure, the same leftward lean, the same broken stem on the capital H that Torres had described 40 minutes ago. "I need to make a call," Logan said. He stepped away from Wade, far enough for privacy, close enough to watch him. He called Torres. "I'm here. The paperwork is what you said. What do I do?" "2 NSYS agents are 15 minutes out," Torres said. "Keep him talking." Logan walked back to Wade. He kept him talking. He asked about the other dogs. He asked about the facility's documentation process, its relationship with the federal adoption program, how long it had been in operation. He asked these questions in the pleasant, unhurried manner of a man with time to spare, while Titan stood in the 3rd run from the left and watched Logan with the amber eyes of a dog who had been in this place for 2 months and understood, with a precision that did not require explanation, that what was happening in the aisle was the thing that had been coming. The NSYS agents arrived in a silver sedan at 11:14 a.m. Wade saw them walk through the front gate, and his assessment of the situation recalibrated visibly. Not collapse, not flight, but the specific recalibration of a man who has been caught in the precise configuration in which he had believed he would not be caught. Agent Morales introduced herself to Wade and told him what she was there about. Logan walked to Titan's kennel and opened it. Titan stepped out. He did not rush. He walked to Logan's side and sat, close enough that his shoulder pressed against Logan's leg, and he looked out at the facility with his ears rotating in their working dog survey, reading everything, processing everything. The same way he had read mountain roads and coast while Danny was walking them. Logan put his hand on Titan's head. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say that would have added anything to the weight of that moment. And Logan had learned a long time ago that the moments that matter most are not the ones that require narration. Preston Wade was charged by federal prosecutors with 6 counts of fraudulent appropriation of military property, 3 counts of wire fraud, and 2 counts of identity fraud for the false adoption applications filed in the names of deceased veterans' non-existent family members. The investigation, which Torres had flagged to NSYS, and which expanded significantly in the weeks following Logan's visit, documented 9 military working dogs improperly transferred through Wade's facility over 4 years. Dogs whose handlers had been killed in service, whose adoption paperwork had been intercepted or forged, and who had been resold to civilian buyers at fees ranging from $300 to $1,200. 7 of those dogs were located. 6 were returned to surviving family members or former teammates who completed proper adoptions. 1, a 7-year-old Malinois named Recon, was adopted by a veterans K-9 program in San Diego. Wade pleaded guilty to the federal charges and received a sentence of 31 months. His facility's license was permanently revoked. Holt Reeves did not exist. The name had been generated using a simple combination of a street name and a common surname from the deceased handler's home county. A technique, the investigators noted, that suggested this was not the first time it had been used, and that the digital trail from the fraudulent applications was more extensive than the initial 9 dogs suggested. The digital trail, when fully excavated, suggested 31 dogs over 7 years. 31. Logan read that number in a message from Torres on a Thursday afternoon, 6 weeks after the Tempe visit, while sitting on the back porch of his rental house in Coronado with Titan asleep at his feet in the October sun. He read it twice. He put the phone down. He sat with what 31 meant for a moment. 31 working dogs, 31 dead handlers, 31 sets of forged paperwork. And then he did what he had learned to do with the things that were too large to process all at once. He put it away somewhere internal and returned to the porch in the afternoon and the dog sleeping in the sun. He was not all right yet. He had not been all right since March. But there were shapes of things that had not existed 8 months ago. A dog at his feet. A case that had moved through its process and landed somewhere real. A number that was 31, and that he had found because he had been sitting at a table at 11 at night, looking at a screen, without quite deciding what he was looking for. He had found what he was looking for. He had not known he was looking. 6 months later, Logan Hayes was on the front porch of a house he had bought. Not rented, bought, in a town called Descanso, 30 miles east of San Diego. In the hills where the pines came down to meet the chaparral, and the air in the morning smelled of sage and cold and the particular clarity that high dry country has before the sun burns the dew off. He had 3 acres. He had a fence line he was building himself, post by post, which was the kind of work that requires your hands and releases your mind, and that he had come to understand was the specific prescription for the particular thing he was managing. Titan was in the yard. He was doing what working dogs do when they have finally been given a place that belongs to them, systematically and thoroughly understanding it. Nose to the ground on the fence line. Ears rotating in their satellite dish survey. The amber eyes tracking the movement of a hawk across the ridge with the focused attention of a dog who considers situational awareness to be its professional obligation and does not clock out. He had found the back corner of the property, the one with the oak tree and the small depression in the ground that caught rainwater, and he had claimed it, had designated it, through some canine conveyance that Logan had not entirely decoded, as the specific corner where Titan went when he needed to do whatever dogs do when they need to do it privately. Logan found this enormously, privately funny, and had not told anyone. He had told Danny once, in his head, which was where he told Danny things now, not often, not dramatically, but when something happened that Danny would have wanted to know about. Danny would have wanted to know about the oak tree corner. Titan came back across the yard at a trot and up the porch steps. 4 steps here, the new porch, 4, and sat beside Logan's chair and put his head on Logan's knee and held it there. Logan put his hand in the thick dark fur along the back of Titan's neck. "Good boy," he said. Titan's tail swept the porch boards once, slow and complete. That was enough. That was Danny's dog and Logan's dog, and the thing that came home from coast when not everything did. And it was enough. And the morning was clear, and the hawk was working the ridge, and the post-by-post fence would be done by Christmas. Sometimes miracles don't wait for you to search for them. Sometimes they appear in a listing on a screen at 11 at night, placed there by someone who did not understand what they were selling, and the one person who recognized what it was happened to be awake. Sometimes God does not prevent the worst things. He places in us, in the aftermath of them, an attention that does not stop noticing, that keeps a man at a table at midnight until something familiar appears on a screen, that sends him 6 hours down a highway to a facility in Tempe, that gives him the stillness to stand in a kennel aisle and keep a fraudulent man talking for 17 minutes while Justice drives across town in a silver sedan. Titan came home because Logan was paying attention. 31 working dogs were found because Logan made a call. The men who placed them into criminal hands were held to account because one person refused to accept that something belonging to the dead should be sold to the highest bidder, and because that person trusted that the right authority existed and went looking until he found it. There are things in this world that belong to someone, not to the highest bidder, not to the person who files the fastest paperwork, to the person whose name was on the other end of the partnership, or, when that person is gone, to the one who was standing next to him when it mattered most. Pay attention. Keep looking. The things that need to be found will find the people who are willing to be found by them. If Logan and Titan's story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to know that justice still finds its way to the things that matter most. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And if you've ever found something at exactly the moment you needed to find it, we want to hear your story. Your words may be what carries someone else through today. If you believe in stories of loyalty, courage, and the quiet faithfulness of God, working through the most ordinary moments, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. May God bless you, protect your family, and remind you always that the things worth finding are never truly lost. They are waiting for the person who will not stop looking.